Right. Good morning, good afternoon, and good evening, everyone, as always. Thank you very much for joining for this session today. It's great to have you all over here. Today, I must apologize to start with that this announcement came at a very short notice. That's because I have been quite busy with my teaching load. As a result, I couldn't just organize everything on time. But I must thank you all for showing your interest and support and for joining. All the esteemed panelists as well as participants, everybody, thank you very much for being here. And on behalf of IAU Women in Astronomy Working Group, it is my great pleasure to welcome you all today on this International Women's Day event. And our topic of discussion is gender disparity in astronomy, a consequence of leaky pipeline effect and possible measures. So as we celebrate today, International Women's Day, though it's tomorrow, it's not today, but it's weekend, this is why we are doing it today. We take this opportunity to acknowledge the contribution of women in astronomy while addressing the persistent challenges that hinder gender equality in this field. The leaky pipeline and glass ceiling effects continue to impact the career of women astronomers and women in STEM fields. And through this discussion, we hope to explore possible solutions on how to create a more inclusive and supportive environment. And that means supportive for everybody, all genders. It's not just about women, it's not just about men, it's about everybody, so that everyone feels welcome in this field of research. So we are honored to have an exceptional lineup of speakers who will share their insights and experience on gender equality and diversity issues in their institutions, the institutional strategies that they have implemented for building equality and successful model of gender balance in astronomy within their institutions and advocated for it over several years, all along their careers also, in fact. And we extend our sincere appreciation to male allies and speakers who are a part of Women in Astronomy Working Group or who take part and who speak in our sessions for their commitment to gender equality and their valuable contributions to fostering a more inclusive working environment. The advocacy and the support that we see from all of you as members of Women in Astronomy Working Group, and even if not a member of this working group, is a crucial thing. I mean, it is playing a very important role in addressing these challenges and conveying the message to the whole community. And it is, in fact, bringing a very important and meaningful change, because I have seen it over the last 6 years that this whole activity that I have been organizing, how things are slowly improving. It doesn't improve very rapidly, but there is a positive change, which I do see. And that means if I can do, anyone else can do it. And if everyone just joins their energy and they do it, I think we will manage to, come up with a more secure and enjoyable working environment. The advocacy and the support of all the members of the community has played an important role until now. And so we look forward to listening to the lectures that we are having today and to engage into an open discussion and question and answer session where I invite all of you to pose your questions and get answers from the list of experienced speakers that we are having today. We are very lucky to have them. So please take the advantage, ask your questions, and get answers and insights. So to begin today's session, I'll provide some background and update on the topics on behalf of the Women in Astronomy Working Group that should be addressed. And then I'll hand this session to our panel members to give us their presentation, share their experience, as well as answer our questions. So welcome, everybody, and wish you a very happy International Women's Day to start with. I'll share my slide. Right, so I hope you can see my slide. Is it visible?
Yes, it's not in the presentation mode, but we can see it.
Okay, and is it better now?
Yeah.
Okay, thank you very much. So, so to start with, I'm going to talk about gender disparity in astronomy, exploring the leaky pipeline phenomena and addressing lacking and the areas that are lacking efforts. And this presentation is on behalf of Women in Astronomy Working Group, and I'm also part of European Astronomical Society DEI Advisory Committee. So I'm also presenting on behalf of them. So to start with, to give you a background, the IAU membership data shows that there are more than 12,000 members from all over the world who are part of this esteemed union representing astronomers from all over the world. But in this organization, we have 78.7% male members and only 21.2% female members, with a very small number of unknown gender members, so around 0.1%. I'm sorry, we are. Could you please switch off your microphones? Okay, sorry. So there was a little disturbance. Okay, so this is the statistics. And if we go further, what we can see is among these members, almost the Women in Astronomy Working Group members that we have only 1.6% among this 12,000 members in this union, astronomical union. So that's a very small number of members who are a part of Women in Astronomy Working Group. And among these 1.6% of members who are a part of Women in Astronomy Working Group, 88.6% are female and only 11.4% are male. And if you look at these 88.6% female members, actually they just are 6.5% of the complete female members who are a part of IAU. So among this whole 21% female that I showed you here in the IAU statistics, among those 22%, only 6.5% are a part of Women in Astronomy Working Group. Others are not a part of Women in Astronomy Working Group. So they are, of course, carrying out all sorts of activities in their institutions, but they are not active members, at least here. That's what we see. And among the male members, among those 12,000 members, the male members, we have only 0.2% who are a part of Women in Astronomy Working Group. So that's really very small number. So that's a question which is always ticking in my mind, why we don't have more members in this Women in Astronomy Working Group, and how, if they are really concerned about establishing gender balance in their institutions, we should be having more members and more exchange of policies and activities and etc., which we don't see here. But what we clearly see is this imbalance in the percentage of male and female members, and that is because of leaky pipeline and glass ceiling effect. And that's exactly what we want to address today in this session on this International Women's Day. So in order to understand this gender disparity that we already see in the IAU's data, we conducted a survey from the Women in Astronomy Working Group. It was initiated by us. And in this survey, we collected data over 3 years. And around 750 members from several countries participated, as you can see here, with most of the participation from Italy, US, Australia, and then going down to other countries. So if you just group it in continent-wise, you can see that most of the members who participated in this survey were from Europe, followed by America, then Oceania, Asia, Africa, Middle East, and other countries. So more than 50% members were from the EU countries. So whatever we see in this data is, I must say, 50% response are coming from the EU members. So please keep that in mind. And this survey was to understand this gender disparity and to understand also the working conditions that are being provided to women in astronomy and why we have less women. So what we saw also that in this Women in Astronomy Working Group that we have in the IAU, most of the women are from the US. So there's a lot of activity to support women in astronomy in the US. That's great. Followed by Italy, France, India, Netherlands, Germany, and then it keeps going down. And the red bars are female members, and the blue are male members. So there are male members in this working group, but not so many. And most of these male members are either from the US, Italy, France, Netherlands, Australia, UK, and a few other countries that you see here. So, so that's the situation of Women in Astronomy Working Group membership. Right. Now, what we see with our at least 5 years of surveys that we have conducted is a clear disparity, gender disparity in astronomy. What happens is at the PhD phase, we have both male and female students who enter to do their PhDs, and there are almost 55% male and 45% female candidates who start their PhDs. They finish also their PhDs. But once they finish their PhDs and they enter into the postdoc phase, we see 75% male and 25% female who are postdocs in astronomy. And this number of female or percentage of female keeps going down from in the postdoc phase up to the permanent position. There is a complete dropout of female members from this field, which is happening after PhD up to securing a permanent position. When it comes to looking at the statistics of permanent members, then we see there are 75%, as we already saw from the gender statistics of the IAU, that 79% are male and 21% are female. In most of the institutions also, and in most of the countries also, we are seeing this kind of statistics. And at professor and director level, at very top level, we see 98% male and only 1 or 2% female who hold such positions. So what does these data show? That there is a systematic loss of highly skilled female in top academic and highly skilled STEM fields. That's one thing. What are we doing to retain the skilled people in the system is a big question to address today. And why are we losing them, and why are they being lost systematically after PhD up to a permanent position? And that permanent position may happen 10 years after PhD until maybe 20, 50, or may never happen for female candidates, depending upon what is their background, whether they have family responsibilities or caretaking responsibilities. But what is the consequence of this leakage that we see? This is called the leaky pipeline effect. And what is the consequence? Limited opportunities for future generation women, reduced overall effectiveness because we see a rise in mental health issues in the institutions. And we also see a problem for people to adapt into these fields, the young female to pick up this career because they don't have role models at every career stage. Okay, so to put this into more understanding or more representative way, I've just plotted this graph. What we see is a glass ceiling effect. 45% female candidates at the PhD level, which goes down to 25% at postdoc level, which goes down to 21% at permanent positions, and 2% at top levels of professors or directors. So this is how it goes, the trend for women in the field of astronomy. And there is a real loss of skilled females. What is also interesting is that what do they go through when they are in this postdoc phase and non-permanent career situation? So what they come across is actually, why does it happen? So the factors that are affecting basically their careers, the most prominent factor is maternity and family responsibility or caregiving responsibilities for elderly members in the families. So that's one of the main reasons. But besides that, there is a social stereotype, discrimination and bullying, lack of support. And this is happening by both male and female members in the institutions. It's not just men who are, creating bias or discrimination or whatever. It's both members are doing that, unfortunately. A lack of support at work by both men and women, few job opportunities, lack of role models, lack of flexibility at work, glass ceiling effect, unethical and unfair evolution of of their work by both men and women. Mental and sexual harassment is also at rise, and lack of family support, because if you're not being well paid, then you are losing your interest. When you're losing your interest, the family is also not supporting you to continue with the activities, and everything is lined up. Lack of motivation that you can start to see in these female candidates. Some people have also said that they have lack of confidence. I don't agree to that. Women are not lacking confidence. It's mostly motivation and the stereotype which is putting them down. Imposter syndrome is there. They are being excluded from the meetings, from the, from the positions, etc. Lack of visibility or non-acknowledgement of their work and suppression of their work is happening. Racism is also there, which they have to face, and need of over socialization is also there. They have to socialize a lot to get jobs. This is another problem which they have to face. And overworking constraint. They are always working too much and not having enough time, etc. And they are working at low salaries. So these were the factors which were provided by the members who participated in the survey. So it's not my input over here, but this is what I've got. And these are the factors which we need to actually take into account while evaluating a file or for job for candidates and for female researchers. So there is a lack of awareness about all this. And as a result, we have been doing this activity to create awareness and support positions and fundings for women researchers. But they often get the advice to leave academia and or to work under underpaid conditions if they want to continue to work, especially if they are mothers. So just to show you this more in a graphic way, you have PhD and postdoc students entering, so 55% male, 45% female, but a lot of leakage is happening from in the postdoc phase, which may last from 6 years up to 17, 20 years, or maybe throughout their career. And at permanent positions, we have 80% male, 20% female, with very few female within the pipeline. Most of them are having non-permanent positions, are somehow trying to maintain themselves in the field by getting funds or support. And at senior positions, we have very few female. So all these factors, as well as this kind of disparity and the leakage that we see in the pipeline, the discrimination, the neglect of expertise, and the bias, they all feed into this glass ceiling effect. And the glass ceiling effect is basically an invisible barrier for the growth of the career of women researchers in this field. And this glass ceiling effect is very visible with the gender imbalance. So if you have a gender imbalance in your institution, you have to check these factors and try to solve it, because the gender imbalance is a consequence of leaky pipeline effect and the glass ceiling effect together. And what happens if you have gender imbalance? You have this kind of unhealthy and unsafe working conditions where there is harassment, there is exploitation, there is all sorts of factors that we saw before. How do we solve this issue? So the way to solve is provide funds, support. We have to engage more female members, recruit female postdocs. Even if they have family responsibility, that doesn't mean they are losing their capacity to think and do research. They can still go on and do their research, but they need to be paid. They have family responsibilities. If they are not paid, they can't go on working if they are underpaid or unpaid or not paid. And if they are not being evaluated correctly, I mean, if they are if they are working part-time, their evaluation should not be compared with the evaluation of a person who has worked full-time while offering positions. So these are the factors which are not being taken into consideration completely. So provide position, provide flexibility at workplace. Mothers with more than 10 years of experience and who have family responsibility should be retained. They shouldn't be, left out. So this is another factor, and support should be provided for mentally and physically. Right. So putting all this into a graph, this is very interesting because what this shows is the timeline of candidates who enter into this field and how it progresses. And what we can see is for male candidates and also married fathers, let's say, people with responsibility and not who are having less family responsibility, their career still goes straight most of the time. That doesn't mean it's very easy for them. They have to work hard equally, but somehow they have to face less barriers as compared to a mother who is, where we represent this with this purple curve over here. A female mother who has to take care of family and who has this kind of maternity breaks, they start to have a flatness in their curve or career path. Whereas single women who are not having family responsibility, they have a career path similar, almost similar to the married fathers and the male candidate. So what happens when you have this flatness in the curve during the uh, uh, the productivity goes down, and then when the files are being evaluated for permanent positions or for postdoc positions, the productivity is being taken into consideration and being compared with members who are having full-time positions and full-time salaries instead of part-time positions and part-time salaries. Of course, this is not correct to evaluate in that sense, but that's what is happening. And then the career prospects of these female researchers who are mothers goes down and down. And finally, they land up to either have no position or to have low paid positions throughout their career. And so this is why we see this kind of gender disparity in this field. So we need to retain the mothers in the field. That's one thing, besides supporting the career of all the women in the field. Right. And who are the policymakers? Who are the hiring committee members? So mostly 8 men and 2 women. I mean, 80% men and 20% women. Among the 20% women, there will be one younger member and one senior member. But at the very top level, we will always have mostly male members. So these male members need to take into consideration all these problems that female researchers are facing in order to establish gender equality in their institutions. So it's not just IAU, even ESO is doing it. ESO has published the status of women on the ESO staff gender distribution. And even they show this kind of disparity for full-time positions, you have mostly male and very few female. At associate position, assistant position, how the numbers are different. Mostly male are dark blue and female are light blue. Things are getting slightly better. It shows an increase in female members with observing program committee and panels, but diversity and retention of women, especially mothers, career was not yet published. And so we would like to see that data as well in the ESO staff gender distribution. It's also happening at ESA. Recently, they have started. So they also show that they want to reach a target of 40% women at ESA. And it reached that target in 2018, but it is now going down. This is until 2021. We don't know what's the situation now, if it has gone down further or if it has gone better. But it shows an increase in female members recruitment, but diversity and retention of mothers' career, no one is talking about it. But these mothers are the 90% women who are actually being lost in this whole leaky pipeline effect. Okay, so in order to address all this, bring all this data to the community so that they can, use it while designing their policies and supporting the career and hiring the candidates for postdoc and permanent position, IAU Women in Astronomy Working Group came up with a 4-point plan. And our plan was to create awareness and sustainability, train and skill building, training and skill building, funding and career retention. We were not successful in getting funds just for supporting women career until now, but we are looking for funds because there is a demand from women from different countries to have some support in order to just submit their thesis and to attend a meeting so that they can do some networking and get some jobs that they don't have. So we need to provide them small funds, but we don't get it. And we have been doing a lot of dissemination and communication via regular meetings and talks and newsletters. So you can see here all sorts of efforts that we are doing since 2021. We have been conducting interview series of famous researchers and role models, for me at least, like Jocelyn Balbana. We have been conducting mentoring session for mothers in astronomy. We have been also proposing other career paths to follow in astronomy if one doesn't has only researcher position. So there are certain examples of that, and many other talks and mentoring sessions that we have been organizing. We are also supporting the careers of, not only, supporting, we are also kind of promoting this research field to younger generations by going to schools and colleges. We have not done it so much. We have done very less, but still we have started some efforts with the help of IAU Outreach Working Group. And yeah, so that was at the school and college level, where we give talks and we organize activities. And we also collect testimonials from women from all over the world in this field and what conditions they are facing. And the conditions they are facing is not always good, because they get less paid, because they are working for free, because they are having all sorts of problems, harassments. As you can see, all the comments are here. We are publishing it on our website. If you want to know what's going on, you have to just go on the website, look at the testimonials of working conditions of women, and you will find all the problems that they face. Besides that, we conduct training programs also regularly. So most of them was initiated by Priyasan from 2021 to 2024. And these training programs have been very useful for early career researchers and students. Then we have been also trying to get funds. I got one fund and I supported career of 2 women candidates with that, but that was really for PhD positions, and I would like to extend this kind of support to women from all over the world. But it's difficult to get funds. But if you have funds, you want to announce it, please announce it on our website. Please send me the email so that we can do it, and so that it gets registered also here, that there are supporting members who are there willing to help and support carriers. Besides that, we are regularly publishing our newsletters and spreading it everywhere. I mean, giving it to the community members so that they can use it and they can follow all our activities and join our activities. And thanks to that newsletters, actually, we have visitors from 93 countries and more who are actually following all our activities and who have joined our working group. So that's very good. So it has an outreach all over the world of whatever we are doing. So that's great. Now, it is very important to know that if we wouldn't do all these activities, things won't be visible to the community members. But all these activities demand time, as we understand very well. And all these women in Astronomy Working Group members are unpaid volunteers, like other volunteers of the IAU. And they are working either under part-time or underpaid positions. And they are in many of them may not be in permanent positions or in vulnerable stage in their careers. These activities are not paid, and it takes almost 3 months over the year to come up with all, to maintain this whole regular production or organization of activities and bringing it to the community members. So it's a big responsibility, and it is very time consuming, and it is not paid. Everyone should remember that, because if you want to do it in the future, you have to also be willing to accept this in order to help the whole community, because actually what they are doing is they are helping the whole community. Right. And to support the career of women in astronomy, we have been asking IAU funding agency and institutions to support STEM ambassador program. And so that all these activities perhaps could be conducted under paid conditions, but we have not got positive outcomes yet. But we do have some good news for you. IAU has accepted to launch this STEM Ambassador Recognition Award, and that was accepted in the last General Assembly meeting that was held in South Africa. And so now we are going to launch today. We are officially launching it, but inviting nominations from the community members. So if you want to nominate anybody who is doing good work and whom you want to recognize as a STEM ambassador, then please do so. Send us your nominations, and we are in process of actually coming up with a poster of all these STEM ambassadors, and we will be giving them award during the next General Assembly meeting. But more than that, what is important is to note that we have to we have to have inclusive policies. And policymakers are both basically funding agency members, universities, and journals. So they should have inclusive policies, and they should be the one who should be publishing regular results of gender statistics and equalities or gender balance in their institutions, in their funding agencies, and in their universities. So are we getting equal number of for example, like ESO has been doing, equal number of male and female applicants for the observations, or for publishing their results, and or getting funds, or getting permanent position in institutions. But this whole thing works only when you have a clear policy for the evaluators who are evaluating the files which are coming to them, or the candidatures which are candidacy which are coming to them. So if they are doing a balanced job, this is when the policymakers will manage to also do the balanced job. So it goes both ways, and this is where I think more clarity is needed. What are the next steps? I think grant agencies, peer review journals, universities, and industries, they have to come up with clear policies of having gender balance plans in their policies. Like, for example, the European Commission programs are having this kind of a section on gender balance. Do you have gender balance program in your project? And if yes, you are being evaluated for that. And you may lose point if it is not written, this part is not well mentioned and well structured in your research program. So that should become mandatory for everyone who are involved here, because these are the policymakers, these are the ones who have the power to implement this, how would I say, this point. I mean, they have to include into their policies to have gender balance. Um, so, uh, so the consequence of gender imbalance in STEM, what we see is exactly this imbalance in institutions, which is mostly we also see in the statistics with 80% men and 20% women. The impact of gender imbalance in institutions give rise to sustainability issues. Are the structures sustainable? Do we trust the system, or we want to quit because the system cannot help us, because we don't have funds support for our or we don't, it doesn't gives any hope of any kind of progress in our careers. And it brings a organizational reputation into question. Are these organizations really committed to what they promise? And should we really get into this kind of research field? It reduces employee engagement. You can see lack of motivation to conduct the job, and ethical and moral issues come into picture, and followed by legal and other risk. And the consequence of this kind of imbalance is finally that the loss of direction, unstable leadership, and difficulty to attract young researchers and secure fundings, etc. And we are seeing these things. This is already happening. I have seen it in my career happening. So what are the measures to fix gender disparity in astronomy? Provide workspace flexibility, fix the leaky pipeline effect. It is very important to do that. Provide long-term contracts, if not permanent positions, to female researchers who are senior, because many senior female researchers are not having permanent positions, and most of the support is coming for young female researchers, which is also important. But you have to retain the senior researchers also if you want to have the gender balance and role models. Gender balance in decision making and positions and career progressions. Training sessions are very important. The ones who are working part-time or who are having family responsibilities, they are losing their training time, which the others don't, who are working full-time. So they should be offered some training in order to retain and in order to help them to have progress in their careers. And most important is to measure the gender-based harassment at institutions and at legal levels, and monitor the progress and publish the progress report every year, so that people start to believe and trust the system and continue to do their research in the field and tackle gender disparity in astronomy. So with this efforts that we have been doing on our side, what we have to offer you is at least this poster that we have come up after let's say 4 years of work, which you can use during International Women Day in your institutions or during science meetings and open days to create awareness, for example. So if you want a poster version, then you have to send us an email, then we can forward it to you. You can print it and put it in your institutions so that people know that what steps they have to take in order to counter gender disparity in astronomy. We are also working on a book, Gender Disparity in Astronomy and IAU Perspective. It is in progress. We have got some contributions already, and the contributions from all the members all over the world is open. Please send us your contributions. And finally, we have, over the 4 or 5 years of our work, finally, we have managed to convince the IAU to launch this IAU STEM Ambassador Award in order to recognize the efforts being carried out by the members. So with this, I'll stop my talk and thank you for your attention. And I am open to take questions. Any questions?
Mamta, I have a question. Have you seen that the panorama for women has changed with the NSF withdraw of funding for any keywords that say something about gender or equality, or if you present a project with some of these keywords, you are filtered out
All
of
right.
funding without even get them to know your research proposal. I mean, is there something you can comment about this?
Yeah, so that is a very interesting question and a recent development that has come up. And there's a lot of talking happening about it in the IAU at the executive committee level. Well, so no one has stopped me until now to go on with supporting women career in research, but it is mostly impacting the EDI committee. That's what I have seen until now. So the EDI committee members are the ones who are talking a lot about it. And it's not just happening at the IAU level, it's also happening in most of the scientific projects that big projects, mega projects that we have. We are getting emails from people who are either standing together to support it or who are thinking about what they can do in current circumstances. So it will be very good to perhaps know more from senior members, but that's what I have myself at this stage understood from what's going on. But at the EU Commission level, for example, while I'm evaluating the proposals, this factor is not, I mean, they're still supporting the EDI projects in the proposals. So if you don't have it mentioned in the proposal, then there are certain points which are removed or low graded. The proposal gets low grade, but it's something which has started recently. So I don't know how things may change 1 or 2 years from now. But if someone else has more information on this, I think it's very important to share. No, right. Okay. Any further questions? Okay. If
Hey,
not,
could I ask
yes, please.
could I ask a question, please? I'm Alexander from the University of Tsukuba. I'm in Japan, and I was wondering, we don't even have the, what was it, 45% at the PhD level
Yes.
in terms of the gender numbers. Um, there's a bigger disparity there, and we're seeing a leaky pipeline extend downwards, from undergraduate school towards masters and PhD. Um, how has this been how has this been internationally, and have there been improvements, and what were the triggers for these improvements?
Well, so at the international level, I can't say much. Now, this 55%, 45%, these are the numbers mostly, as I said in the beginning of the talk. 50% of the response were from the European countries, participants from European countries. So these numbers are mostly, I would say, impacted by the response coming from them. It that's the reason exactly why we want to understand what's going on elsewhere in the world. But please remember that the support for women career is most prominently happening. I mean, real policies are being implemented mostly in the US, UK, and Australia. And slowly it's also happening in Europe, not everywhere in Europe. So, so it's very important to first note that. And then the second point is we want to collect the data from elsewhere and we want to put it in this gender disparity book on gender disparity and IAU perspective from all over the world. So if you have the statistics of your country that you would like to publish, then please send it to us and we will do that. At least then we will have a complete information of what's going on elsewhere. But I don't have complete information. I do have some statistics, but it's coming from either Argentina or from US or from Spain or from European countries.
Okay, thank you. Could I also quickly ask, you mentioned in passing in the beginning that you didn't think confidence was such a big issue, but rather motivation. Could you elaborate on that? I always thought confidence was quite a big thing. I know in children it is. Young girls have much less confidence than young boys, like primary school students, and they underestimate themselves compared to boys. But yeah, how did you come to this
Well,
conclusion?
the point is very clear. It all depends upon the social stereotypes that are existing and the way social practices which are existing and the way the children are being grown. In the same environment, you will have a boy and a girl growing in the same family, but somehow the response of the boy for a certain situation will be different from the girl. That's because of social stereotype as well as the social practices and encouragements. It's not about confidence. When it's a way of measuring the confidence, it's different for male and female, which we have to remember. Just because the social behavior is different or the social outlook for male and female is different. So that's another factor. And if you don't have role models, you will not see how women look at this situation and how men look at the situation. So you need to have gender balance as well as role models in order to evaluate this criteria of confidence. But when I teach in my class, I have male and female both, and I don't see the difference in their confidence. That's the point. It's also about the teacher, how much space they give and what environment they create in the class so that the student feel comfortable, and any student should feel comfortable to come up and speak, whether it is also other gender and not just men and women. So I have not seen that, at least.
Mm-hmm.
Hi, I don't know if you can hear me.
Thank you.
I want to say out of the hundreds and hundreds of women I've worked with from high school through postdoc through junior faculty, they all have no confidence,
Oh, yeah.
very little confidence in that context. So I don't know if it's cultural or what.
Okay. And why do you say so?
I mean,
How did you measure it?
Talk to them and I work with them to build confidence. So I don't have any official measurement, but I have mentored so many people to build their confidence. They just don't have confidence in their work, speaking up in groups.
Yeah, so that's exactly what I'm telling. You see, you need a role model. You need a teacher who creates an environment so that the students, they feel confident to speak. And that's the role of the teacher. That's the role of the professor. And the professor, the way he or she creates the environment, helps everybody to come up and speak. So if the professors are only male professors, and if they put forward the situation in the way they understand and they appreciate, and if it is not giving equal response, equal feedback from both sides, that means there is something missing. And if you're getting equal response from male and female students, that means your job is correct. So it's a bit about how you handle the situation and what platform you're providing, right? I mean, for me, it's that.
I would like to ask statistics you provided for the IAU. Is it based on all members of the IAU or just on the working group members? I missed to understand.
The initial statistics of 12,000 members were all the members of IAU, and then how do you say? Just a moment. Yeah, the factors that are affecting the career of women and the graph that I had showed, the career track, etc. Those are coming from the surveys that we have conducted. That's not about the statistics of women in the statistics of how do you say, the Women in Astronomy Working Group members. So it's all the 12,000 members as well as response coming from the open community, from all the members of the world.
Nice work and very important.
Thank you. Thank you. I think we can go on with the Q&A session, but I would like to now go ahead with the next speaker of today's session because he is actually, it's evening time at his place. So thank you very much for everyone's attention, and let me welcome now our next speaker of this session, which is Luca Casagrande. He is
Thank you.
He's associate.
Thank you, Dr. Mamta. I have a question.
Yes,
What
please.
factors do you think have contributed to Argentina's relative gender balance in astronomy?
What factors, according to me, have contributed to gender balance in astronomy? That's the question?
Yes.
Well, what factors contribute is one, it is very important to support the carriers. It is very important to give an equal space so that people feel trust in expressing what they want and how they want to conduct it, and or they want to work with you. So there should be a trustworthy environment. There should be clear communication, and of course funding. Without funding, I would not encourage people to go on working years and years if they are not funded, because it will impact their health and it will impact also their retirement afterwards. So please remember that part also. Motivation and passion is important to continue and do good job, but at a later stage in your careers, it's your health and it's your financial security which comes into play. So please think about that as well. And so what factors have contributed into gender balance? Until now, we don't see much gender balance happening. But what factors would contribute is by being supportive, by being open, encouraging open communication, by providing funds, supporting careers, and being in a group, supporting each other, mentoring sessions, sharing skills, which is all what we are doing actually with the IAU. But we are doing it with limited resource and a lot of time commitment. Right.
Thank you very much, Dr. Mamta. I have, in this special occasion of International Women's Day, I extend my heartfelt congratulations to all women around the world, especially those working in the field of astronomy. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank you very much for your kind words and appreciation as well as support. It is important for us. Thanks. Okay, so we will move on to the next speaker. So Luca Casagrande is Associate Director of Inclusion, Diversity, Equity and Access in Research School of Astronomy and Astrophysics at the Australian National University. He is leading the EDI activities in his institute and has initiated several inclusive policies to support the career of parents in astronomy and to support work-life balanced work environment in astronomy in his institute. So we are going to listen to him, as it is very important, as we have understood from the talk I gave. So please, we welcome Luca Casagrande. Please welcome him.
Thanks, Mamta. Thanks for the great talk. And good morning, good afternoon, good evening to wherever you are in the world. And thanks for the opportunity to present some of the work and initiative that we are doing at the IAU to improve gender equality and gender balance at our own institute. And sorry, okay. And so what I'm going to talk now is what we do to support women and women identifying individuals and really diversity in its broader sense at our own institute in astronomy. And this is based on some of the experience in the role of inclusion and diversity that I have at the institute. And just to make it clear, of course, there is more than just binary gender, and diversity is really like a broad topic that includes other dimensions in diversity. But for the sake of what I'm going to talk now, the focus is primarily going to be on gender. And I'm going to talk about astronomy, but really I want to think that what we do in astronomy can have some impact on science more broadly. And so just to put ourselves on a map here, and I think it will be the recurrent theme tonight is that I want to have like really an open discussion about some of the initiative, the measure and the success and the failure that we have at our own institute. And just to put ourselves on a map, we are the NU, the Australian National University. We are based in Canberra, so some few hundred kilometers from the coast in Canberra. We do have some water. We have some lakes there. And if you look at the horizon on some of those hills, there is the Research School of Astronomy and Astrophysics. It's Mount Stromlo. We do make research in astronomy and astrophysics, but we also have a group which works on developing instruments. And so in that group, then there is like people working on technical side, on engineering, and that adds an extra layers in terms of the addressing the diversity and the challenges that we have into doing that. And then as part of the institute, we also operate a telescope, an observatory that inside in Spring is a remote location in rural New South Wales, some 600-700 kilometers from Canberra. And again, that adds different layers of challenges in reaching diversity. And just to put some number and some context, most of what I'm going to talk about is the measure and the initiative that we do at the institute level. That's about 100 people in staff and probably 70 students between masters and PhDs. And then obviously I'm also going to touch a little bit about the broader initiative at the university level, and that's include about 4,500 staff and 17,000 students. And so really what I would like to talk now is about the organizational structures that allows some measure to be into place and the strategy that we take. Then I'll focus on some of the results, as well as I want to touch on some of the challenges. And the challenge is really like the challenges of some of the individuals. And that comes from, talking with people, having survey, taking the pulse of what's going on, but also the challenges that exist at the organizational level in terms of like what can be achieved, what are the policies, and what can be done. And so just to put like a little bit of a perspective on how the organizational structure works, the initiative in the space of inclusion and diversity, DEI or IDEA, depending on the acronym that you prefer, are happening within the university at different level. So there is the higher level, obviously the university, then we have colleges, and then we have different schools. And each school essentially is the equivalent of different departments, right? And so most of what I'm going to talk in terms of the initiative and actions and tracking of the data is at the school level. So the Research School of Astronomy and Astrophysics, RSAA, and as well as a little bit of the college level, since there is a good interaction between the activity that goes on at the college and the school level. But of course, like some of the bigger policies, and I'm thinking, for example, of the parental leave policy, that's a framework that comes from the broader university level. So that's clearly also some level of connection with what's going on at the university level. And in terms of the organizational structure, then we have within schools, there is like DEI or IDEA committees, and there is an associate director taking care of that. And then at the college level, there is an associate dean for diversity. And so I think that's already like something which is quite important into pushing for inclusion and diversity and gender balance, in the sense that we have some governance and some accountability, okay? And so the governance gives the structure to make things happen, and the accountability also makes, the responsibility of making those things happen. So there is a clear line of reporting, of action, and of like a path that has to be taken. to make things happen. And that's, I think, it's part of the broader like inclusion and diversity as a working environment. So why do we need actions? I mean, I'm sure like here, of course, we are all aware of that. But like still, like if words of the street, and if you talk around, some of the people are like, well, why do we need like any action for inclusion and diversity? We live in most of us, and certainly here in Australia, in democratic societies, there is access to education. You can study and pursue the career you want. And the system might not be perfect, but it's meritocratic. If you work hard enough, then you have a chance, right? And most of people think this is like maybe there's a few bumps here and there, but overall it's a smooth sailing. And the moment you think that, essentially you set people up for disaster. And you set people up for disaster, but also like if you're like working in an institute, you also really like putting like up for disaster your own institute. And the reason for this is because, we have systemic biases, there is like discrimination, there is workplace culture, policies, as well as social and structural, like dominant group, right? And so there is this very strong inertia that essentially it's very hard to overcome, right? And because of that, then we have this leaky pipeline. And so I think this graph really highlights very well what the leaky pipeline is. So we see that we have the fraction of women as function of different career stage. This is taken from a paper by Lisa Cooley. I'll discuss more about that later on. And it's based on data which are from late 2019 across Australia. And so, like it's not like in terms of fraction at the highest level, it's not as bad as, for example, the aggregate data that Mamta showed before, where we have like 2%. So we're already like at a higher level. But nevertheless, there is a clear leaky pipeline. We start around 30 to 35% at the honors and master and PhD level. And then as you progress into the career, that percentage of women at different career stage, it keeps dropping and dropping and dropping. And that's the leaky pipeline, right? And so this leaky pipeline essentially is this glass ceiling that affect women as well as underrepresented group, I would say, across all areas. And so like the good thing about dealing with this in terms of astronomy or science in general is that at least we are all like rational people, and if we are presented with the data, at least most of us, when there is evidence and when there is data, we see what's going on, right? And here I'm talking about science, but as I said before, these affect like pretty much all areas. It can be in the corporate world, it can be in politics, and I'm not going to enter into that, but I'm just saying that in science, at least, we can reason when we have the data and we show the data. And I think that's a really important aspect that we need to keep in mind. Because, if we discuss this openly, then essentially we create this culture and we can, expose the issue, we talk, people see that's happening, and that really like you build and you create this kind of culture that really sustain bottom-up initiatives. We also need though like top-down approaches because we want to drive the systemic change, right? And to drive the systemic change, we really need to change in policies and into actions. But I think the two aspects, the bottom-up and the top-down, they really go hand in hand because from one side you create the work culture, and from the other one, you set the strategic goal that you need to achieve a change. So what are the strategic goal? Okay, if you go back to the university structure at the highest level, university, has a clear goal that is to drive equity and diversity. And that's a very, is a statement of principle, is very important, is commendable, but it's very generic in itself, right? And what is important to achieve certain goals is that you need to set those goals, in a way that you can achieve them, right? And so here there is like, I don't really like acronyms, but I think this one is a good one. You have to set SMART goals, right? And by SMART, I mean specific, measurable, achievable, relevant, and time-bound. And this is what's happening, for example, when we got the college level, right? At the college level, then we have a goal, which is, having parity in staffing by all categories by 2030. And so the goal now becomes very specific, right? We want parity. And parity in this case is defined anywhere between the level of 40 to 60%. So it's measurable, and then is relevant because it's a goal that we wanna achieve, and it's time bound. In this case, we want to reach this goal by 2030, and then this goal then goes down to the schools, and then it's up to the schools to devise a hiring strategy. And what we have done is to devise an equitable hiring strategy that was done like 2-3 years ago now. And through this strategy, then we try to achieve the strategic goal, which is to reach parity. Okay, and so this is just to give a sense of how we try to operate. And so, what is the equitable hiring strategy that we have developed? Well, the equitable hiring strategy is a set of recommendations to increase diversity through hiring and retention. And the goal really is to address, as I said, at the very beginning of this discussion, is to assess to address the broader diversity, right? So we want to address the broader diversity, but clearly we also need a focus. As I said before, we need to have some specific goal, right? And the specific goal is that, okay, within the broader diversity, then one primary goal is gender diversity, okay? And so this set of recommendation essentially is a set of actions, and then we also have to benchmark them against some sort of metric to define whether we have reached success or not. And so the first one, for example, would be, having unconscious bias training, right? And we, regularly have unconscious bias training at the institute, right? And the goal is to have more than 90% of the staff to complete this. And in fact, we are at that level, right? Obviously, especially among the student and postdoc cohort, that's a more transitory phase because people come for a few years and then they move. So that's the reason why we also try to keep this training happening on a regular basis, so that is always happening. There is refreshing, and people are reminded about that. Okay. But clearly, this is one of the recommendations, and it's not that you do a training and then you tick the box and you're done and you're unbiased. Obviously, it's all a set of rules and a set of culture that we need to build, and that's one part of that culture. But it's not by all means the only thing that needs to be done, right? Another point, for example, when hiring people, is that we need to rubric for each position before we see the candidates, right? And that's because, again, you don't want to bias yourself. You don't want to see the candidates and already, made up your mind on the candidates that you want. But you want to set, okay, these are the requirements that I want. And then based on these requirements, which are the candidates that fit these requirements, right? And also, we want to have selection panels which are biased, which are balanced, okay? And so by balanced, again, we want to have them primarily gender balanced. And again, here the ratio is usually 40, 40, and 20 to allow some, a little bit of room not to be exactly 50-50, because we also don't want to overload a lower fraction of women already with more and more duties, right? So, and these rubricing and balanced selection panels, we want to have 100% compliance when we do hire or, assess for promotion or retaining people. We also want to have short lists which are separate for men and for women. And within those separate short lists, then we want to have a 50-50 ratio on the short list, okay? And again, we also want to have that always. And if that's not feasible for different reasons, then we need to ask a permission from the school director. And possible reason why that's not, sometimes not feasible is because there is a very strong imbalance between the number of men and women apply for a position, right? And so that's already in itself tells you that there is a problem. And the problem is that, okay, maybe we need to advertise more broadly certain, certain job announcements. We need to, encourage, different people to apply. We also need to be seen as a place where different people from different backgrounds, from different gender, they want to come to work with us, right? And so that's really the fact that sometimes we might have a difficulty in having a large pool of applicants is already a telling sign of the fact that we're not doing well the job in terms of advertising broadly enough what the position that we intend to fill. other recommendation is that, okay, if we need to increase balance in certain areas, then we can also work towards, women-only positions, right? And the goal here is to increase percentage. And, there is more recommendations. Other recommendation could be, okay, allow candidates to have a statement against, is to have like a statement against, opportunities, right? Meaning that, for example, if there is like career breaks, or if there is being like, significant event in life that has prevented you from having like a regular path in your career, you can highlight and specify those opportunities, or that lack of opportunity and why that has happened, right? And so, as I said before, here the goal is not to have like sort of like a box ticking exercise. For example, if you can't, it's not that, for example, you shortlist someone just because you need to have like a 50-50 shortlist, right? Because that's not the underlying idea. The underlying idea is that you must be able to have like a broad selection of candidates, right? And then what we do is that annually we take all of the job applications that have been happening within the school, and then we benchmark the procedure that was used in those in those hiring processes against the strategy. And all those results are then reported publicly and published annually on our website. And I'll give you the website of our idea page at the end of the talk. So all of this information is then made publicly available for the purpose of good communication, which is also good communication is also part of this work culture. And so how do we track into that regard? And so this tracking, as I said before, is done, we do it annually within the school, but it's also done at the college level, right? And before I present some of the results, then I'll just very briefly highlight how is the structure within the university of the different jobs, right? So typically, if we look at the academic side, we have academic people are hired on a level A to E. So level A would be the first postdoc, and then you go senior postdoc, the equivalent of assistant professor, associate professor, and full professor. So that's level A to E. And then we also track HR and professional staff, as well as technical and IT staff. Okay. And so this reporting is something that has happened essentially in the last year only. So it's a very short time baseline. But, just a reminder, at the college level, we include different schools, right? So there is a school of physics, astronomy, biology, chemistry, math, etc. So obviously, there is like a great deal of variance within the different schools. But if you look at the level A, B, and C, which typically would be, from postdocs, from like junior postdocs to more senior postdocs or so, in the last year, there has been like a 3.5% increase in women at those levels, right? And if we look at the level D and E, there has been as well like around 3%, right? So we're now globally, again, at the level of the college, we have at 42% at the more junior postdoc levels. And typically D and E is equivalent of faculty level, and we have like 27%, right? So if we, project that trend into the future, then essentially, well, at the level A, B, and C, we're already reaching the 40 to 60% parity, or parity defined as 40 to 60%. And at the level D and E, we are on track to reach that within the 2030, right? But as I said, there is quite variance between different schools. Some schools, of course, have much higher women percentage compared to others. And, the data collection is also not straightforward because it's from different schools, and there is like different rules and different level of HR that you have to go through to access all of the data. So it's not like the most easy exercise, but it can be done. And I would say that we see like a positive change with the caveat that this is only 1 year of data, right? So I think things seems to be doing all right, but moderately all right, a few percent increase, but only for a year. Now, if we go to the school level, we have done this exercise for a little bit longer. Essentially, we had a demographic survey that was 3 years ago. And now in the past couple of years, we have been benchmarking against this equitable hiring strategy. And what we've benchmark against is against, you know, the training that we do, the mitigation measure that we take when we are hiring people, how we advertise, how we shortlist and make offers, right? And clearly, because this is something that is done at the level of the school, we have better access to the data, so we can really slice the data into more dimensions. But obviously, you know, it's fewer people, so the data is also more granular, right? So you have to pay a little bit of this trade-off. But the bottom line here is that typically what we see is gender balance among the applicants and the job offer essentially reflect the status quo across the school, right? So with this strategy, essentially we are doing a good job at keeping the status quo, but we are not really dramatically improving things. And that's over the past essentially 3 years. So we have like at the academic level, now I'm doing, you know, across level A, B to E, roughly 27%. HR, there is a reverse bias of 67% women fraction. And at the technical level, we have the 19%. Then essentially the conclusion here is that, you know, this equitable hiring strategy is going to lead to a gender balance, but on a very long time scale, right? And the other caveat that is good to report is that, you know, increasing diversity in rural setting, and I'm talking here about the Siding Spring Observatory, so this rural location, is very difficult. It's very difficult because primarily we are looking at technical roles, and also like, you know, it's a rural location, so it's you know, it's inherently more difficult to hire people willing to go into this location. So, but you know, if you look at the two main point that I highlighted before, so the gender balance essentially through this strategy we keep the status quo, and we need very long time scale to reach a balance, right? And here I really want to highlight the work that Lisa Cooley did. This is really seminal work. And Lisa Cooley, she was a faculty member with us up until like a couple of years ago. Now she's the director of CFA. And she really wrote like a couple of seminar papers. One, she developed a data-driven workforce model. And essentially she modeled, you know, like the hiring process and projected that into the future based on a different number of assumptions, right? And so the first assumption was that, okay, what if we maintain the status quo? And by maintaining the status quo, it means like a 50-50 retention, right? Which means that the number of women departing per year relative to the total number of women is the same as the number of men departing per year relative to the total number of men. And if you do that, and you know, you start from like the previous graph that I showed you before. Let's say, you know, we start at the 20% level at the faculty, which is where the data indicate we are. Essentially, we see that, you know, there is an increase, but that increase essentially sort of flats out, right? So you reach like something like 30%, and then up until, you know, in this case, the model was run for 60 years forward in future, and it stays at the, you know, you flat out at the 30% essentially forever, okay? Now, if you put like a little bit more of a requirement on the model and you said, okay, I want to have like parity in hiring as well as in retention, then you achieve like 33% within 20 years. And the 33% is because this is like a fraction which was, you know, sort of like a goal in the previous decadal plan that we had here in Australia. So every 10 years, we have the decadal plan in astronomy. And the previous decadal plan was like, okay, 33% is like you know, like a goal that we should try to reach. And that would take 20 years, right? Now, if you use affirmative actions, which means, you know, you keep the 50-50 retention at the level A to B, but then at the more senior level, essentially C to E, which typically corresponds to faculty level, then you introduce like a 78% women hire. And in that case, you reach 33% within 10 years, and you reach 50% within 25 years, okay? And so this was one of the results. And the other paper, essentially, she looked at the gender parity within center of excellence. So in Australia, we have different center of excellence for different science areas. And we just had a center of excellence in astronomy. And this center of excellence is like a conglomerate of different universities funded from like central government funding to support, in this case was to support astronomy, right? And so what it was seen within the center is that, when there is overall fraction of 40% among women, after that, essentially, you reach a tipping point, and then things start to increase and accelerate, and then essentially the system sort of like corrects itself, and then it reaches balances, right? And so this is a very important result because essentially, also some of the plots that were shown before, we have these like sort of like 40%. And why the 40%? Because 40% is where you reach the tipping point, and then things start to sort of self adjust, right? And so the bottom line here is that we need affirmative actions if we want to change things within a reasonable time scale. And the other one is that, you reach this 40% tipping point, right? And so this histogram here on the left side, I'm showing, the fraction of women in women-led or co-led teams, right? And the different color bars is just tracking at different years. And what you see is that, once you reach, typically you have the investigators is like more senior people. And once you reach this 40% among senior people, so you see it here that you reach the 40%, and then as you reach the 40%, then the increment, the increase in the fraction of women really accelerate across the students and across postdocs, right? And here on the right-hand side is the same graph when there is men-led teams, right? And you see that you have like a lower fraction, and then there is not this increment in the number of this increase in the fraction of women, right? And so what these plot shows is that you need role models, right? And so if you have role models and you reach like this 40% point, then essentially you drive the change almost automatically, right? Things start to happen. You start to increase the fraction of women, particularly across students, but also across postdocs, right? And so this is like another very important point. We need affirmative actions and we need role models, okay? Now, if we go back to a demographic surveys, that's from 2022, so a little bit earlier than that. And in this case, we're tracking, again, the fraction of women, men, and non-binary people. And, there is some fluctuations because of the number of postdoc departing. We had a few hires and a few people who left, in particular at the faculty level. Things have changed a bit. Now we are tracking around the 27% across all academic level, right? But what you will notice, and that's the point that I want to make here, is that at the technical and IT level, there is this very, very strong imbalance, right? And the technical and IT, I remind you here, because we also have the instrumentation center, essentially are people and astronomers working on different instruments, right? And typically those roles are like, the equivalent would be like of instrument scientist as well as more engineering role, right? And so because of this very stark disparity, then it was in 2022, 2023, there was a 10 women only recruitment, right? And the goal here was specifically to increase this fraction, right? The goal, in fact, was to bring that fraction to around 30%. What has been achieved is to bring that fraction around 19% because not all positions were filled. And this is also like a same problem that we see when we're trying to increase the fraction of women at the observatory, right? And again, there we are looking at more technical roles. So the bottom line that we can get from this experience is that, okay, there is a problem about relocation, for example. When we try to hire women, especially in dual career roles, then they are less likely, or they are more likely, in fact, to leave astronomy to ensure that the partner, have a job. And I think there is also like an imbalance to start with, because, for example, and this is not just in astronomy, but if you look across the board in general, this is for example, the pay gap, the gender pay gap, right? And so if you look, this is data from the Australian Bureau of Statistics. So this is relevant to Australia, but I think, it's probably similar, if not more, in other countries. And so typically the gender pay gap is around 11% here, right? So there is this gap to start with. And then, like if already like, the woman is earning less, then, the partner is even more unlikely to give up their job to follow the woman, right? Because they're already earning more. So this problem is essentially it compounds, right? And the other problem is that then there is sometimes, the lack of like skills for certain position, in particularly if you're looking for applicants in rural areas, right? So this is more on the technical side. On the more academic side, last year we had like women-only academic recruitment, and we had a very strong response. We had like over 40 applicants, and essentially 9 which were like exceptionally strong candidates, right? And so I think the bottom line or the message that I want you to take from this is that the process is entirely merit-based, right? If certain positions there is not the appropriate skill and the appropriate fit for the position, people are assessed based on their merit, right? And so that's very clear. And when efforts are made, for example, and we've seen that in hiring of academics, when we do make effort in terms of like advertising very broadly the position, when we provide role models within the institute, when the institute is also recognized as having like a good workplace culture, then we do see a very strong pool of applicants most of the time. And I think the other point that is important to make is that we want to have this process as transparent as possible. In fact, pretty much everything I'm saying here is available on our website. And because, by being transparent, by having like proper, clear communication, that's part of like an idea way of working. And because of that, then, like people are more likely to accept and to understand how and why, certain action and affirmative actions are taken, right? And just like on a success note, here I want to say that, overall, if you look at the faculty level, and we're trying to increase the number of, the role models, we are roughly at the 27%. But if you look, for example, at the faculty level in terms of like, year of PhD, so if you look on the more sort of like junior side of the faculty, that we look at, people who got their PhD after the year 2000, then we have a ratio of 40% women to 60% men, right? And clearly, if you look at the more senior faculties, then there is sort of like inherited very strong imbalance, right? But as we go with time, then we're taking measures such that this very strong imbalance it kind of like decreases with time. Okay. And so far, I talk about like, we have this leaking pipeline and how can we fix it, right? And I talked about, the importance of role models, how we need to create a workplace culture. And the workplace culture is where, like we can have like open and clear discussion about diversity, and people understand the importance and the relevance of having diversity in the workplace. And, we create a culture where there is no space for, microaggression, inopportune behavior, as well as harassment, right? And we also need to set strategic goals. But there's also like another point, which I haven't yet mentioned, and is, we need work-life balance and job stability, right? And sometimes like these are like clashing to each other, right? Because you want to have the job stability, you're trying to work hard to get the permanent position, and it's very hard to get the work-life balance, and vice versa, right? So it's a very tricky point to address, right? And here I'm just want to make the point that in terms of like trying to have a work-life balance, who bears the burden of the care, right? And so here I'm reporting a statistic which comes from the Australian national strategy to achieve gender equality. And we see that essentially, in 60% of the people of the families, there is not equal share of responsibilities, right? So someone in the family, typically the women, they have like a higher share of responsibilities, okay? And even when there is like a balanced share of responsibility, for example, who plans and coordinates child activity, in 78% of the time, that always goes on the women, right? So there is also this, this mental load of having to care and thinking of managing the family. And that's, I'm talking about like caring for children, but in fact, this is a more broad issue. It's not just caring for children, but very often also caring for aging parents, right? And sometimes then, women and families are caught in the middle because they might have like young children as well as senior parents, right? And so then you have to try to juggle and manage for both, right? And that's something that needs to be recognized. And so I was lucky enough to be part of a parental leave principal working group. And that was sort of like a series of interviews and surveys that we did across the College of Engineering and Science to really gauge into, what are the needs for people working on or being on a parental leave. And this is like an initiative which was led by Prasanga Saramasinghe. And just to start with, I want to make clear that, at the ANU, we have a very good parental leave policy. We have 26 weeks of paid leave, which is accessible to either parents, right? If you're employed by ANU. And so I think every respondent of the survey was grateful of this great leave policy. But even having like a great policy is not just like solving every problem, right? In fact, here I'm just reporting some of the reply that we got into this survey, right? And the fact is that just because you're on leave, things don't get postponed. Someone has to think about the students. For example, if you are in supervisory role, if you have PhD students, you still need to take care of them, right? Very often, more often than not, especially in academia, there is like single point of failure, right? If you're not there, if you can't supervise the student, no one else can do it, right? If you can't do that research, if you can't, produce that data or do that simulation, no one else can do it, right? And so then that adds to the stress and to the burden. And sometimes you feel like you have to choose between doing your job and looking after the kids. And sometimes you feel like, well, after kids, I can't have like unlimited amount of time to be spent on the work, right? And that makes things very emotional and very hard. And so this is something that one of the possibilities in improving like a parental leave policy would be, okay, typically parental leave are taken as a single block of time, or at least that's the policy. And so an improvement into that would be, okay, instead of having it as a single block of time, maybe it can be taken as a part-time, let's say 3 or 4 days a week, right? So that at least there is still like a few days where, people, say in supervisory roles, they can still like look after their students. But more generally, I would say that the work that needs to be done is really to raise the awareness in managing expectations, right? And this means managing expectation from people that are in supervisory roles and have people that are taking parental leave. We need to understand that it's hard to manage both things, right? And so we need to manage the expectation, but also the people on a parental leave, they need to, to be more aware that, there is a dramatic change in what you can expect to do and what you have the time to do, right? And, one of the consequences of that is that, well, we surely need work-life balance, but to the point that, sometimes we transform the work-life balance into a magic recipe and we say, like we need work-life balance as is another expectation, right? And that adds more stress than not, right? And again, I think, this is something that has to be achieved as an open discussion. And, the policy is good, but we need to raise awareness into some of the difficulties that people face, for example, when having like carers responsibilities, be it for like children in this case, but the same would probably to a similar framework also for people having to look after or like parents or like other carers. And so really what are the takeaway, right? So I think I stressed that we need this bottom-up approach. And the bottom-up approach, it means, we need open discussion. We need to create a workplace culture so that, we have the idea principle as a systematic way of working. We want to have transparent communication, transparent decisional process, and all of that helps to raise awareness. And raising awareness, then there is more people are more open to accept different policy, and this has to be backed up by organizational structure. And within the organizational structure and clear policies, then we can set strategic goals. Among the strategic goals, for example, we can decide to have affirmative actions, right? And through affirmative actions, we can create role models. We can have figures which can be role models that can inspire younger generations. But also, as an institute, we want to be a role model ourselves, right? Because if we are a role model as an institute, then we are seen as a place where people want to come, they want to work with us. And in that way, we can also, increase the pool and the diversity of the applicants, right? We increase that diversity and we can also advocate for diversity. And I want to stop here And at the bottom, I'm just putting the link to our website. So some of the material that I presented here, some of those reports and statistics are all available there. So if you're interested, please have a look. And I'm happy to take questions.
Right. Thank you very much, Luca. That is really great. And I think it supports very much our initiatives and confirms of whatever we are doing and putting forward in a much more, I must say, survey and published way. So that's great. At least it confirms what's going on, and whatever we are claiming is just and it's correct, and that's what should be done. I would request everyone to please hold on for questions for Luca. We have a lot of questions for him, especially myself. Because we are running late and we really want Gloria Dubner, the next speaker, to carry on because she has to leave for some important occasion. So thank you very much, Luca.
Sorry for taking extra time.
Okay, right. So let's go ahead. And now we would like to invite our next speaker of today's session, Professor Gloria Dubner. She's an Argentinian astrophysicist and director of the Instituto de Astronomía Física del Espacio in Buenos Aires. She was, I suppose. And she's a senior researcher now at National Scientific and Technical Research Council. She is known for her research work on supernovae. And I remember when I was a PhD student, at one point I was contacting her to work on this topic. She's an active member of the IAU. She has always been very active in supporting women career in research. And in June 2008, in fact, the minor planet 9515 Dubner was named in her honor, recognizing her achievements at the IAU. So that's a big deal. So we are really having a privilege today to have her to speak about this on this topic, because she has been a real supporter and a role model for many women in Argentina for the work she has been doing. So thank you very much for accepting this invitation and for being with us. Gloria, please take over.
Yes, thank you very much for the invitation, for having me here. I think I'm sharing my screen now.
Yes.
Am I?
Yes, you are.
Okay.
Please put it in play mode.
Yes. Yes.
Yes, it works.
Well, good morning, good evening, good night. Thank you very much. And I'm sorry for the hurry. Unfortunately, I have to leave for a funeral. So instead of numbers, I prefer, I mean, statistics are very important because they keep us very well informed of the situation. However, I decided to make something different, just the more qualitative way to show, because Argentina is an exception, or at least until now. And I want to like to show why. If we look at the IAU statistic that is published, so in comparison with the countries of between 100 and 400 members as they grouped, so Argentina has a notable percentage of women working in astronomy, much higher than the other countries in Latin America, like Brazil, Mexico, or Chile, or in comparison with other countries of other continents, India, Canada, Australia, the Netherlands. So countries with good story in astronomy, but we see, and if we pay attention to the first column of this graph, it's the number, the white numbers. I don't know if they can see. No, not yet. The white numbers are the numbers of women in each frame of ages, and they're not notable leaky pipeline. We have in the fringe of young people working in astronomy a number of 18 women, and in the following fringe 16, and in the following 13. They are small numbers, but it's significant that there is no leaky pipeline here. And why is that? We have role models from the very beginning of the astronomy in our country. In the year 1871 was created the first astronomical observatory of the country, the first in Latin America, the National Astronomical Observatory of Cordoba. And so they came. It's if you look at the column to the left, the first women working in astronomy in that observatory were the wives of the directors, but they were acknowledged by their husbands that they made very hard work, mostly the most difficult work, making long calculations, etc. The point is that in the observatory, it was used to see women working. And then after the year 1913, it started coming astronomers from already graduated in astronomy, graduated at Berkeley, at the UCLA. Anna Glancy, Emma Waterman, Alice Lamb, they came to work with the position as the astronomical observatory in Cordoba. It's funny because the one in the middle of the right column, Emma Waterman, she came to work with a permanent position at the observatory, but during the trip from United States to Argentina in the boat, she met a man and she fell in love and got married. So in 3 months, she left the position. But that apart, it's important that this was the seed of seeing female astronomers just going around in observatories. And in the year 1935, was created the first astronomy faculty in the University of La Plata. That was the first one in Latin America and received many students for the rest of the countries of Latin America. And there were women studying from the very first beginning. And we have some pioneers. I just took very little, but talking about the importance of having role models. I made all my careers having role models of very successful women working in astronomy. For example, Felicita Arias, she became the director of the time department at the Bureau International des Poids de Mesure in Paris. Pippi Niemela, she made standard work in Wolf Rayet stars and very recognized. She was the second Argentinian elected to be member of the Royal Astronomical Society. Catherine Cesarski graduated from the University of Buenos Aires, and she started working for her PhD at the same institute where I completed my thesis work. And then she left and finished it in Harvard. But of course, she was the first female president of the IAU and the first female in many astronomical, the first director of ESO and in many very important positions. So having these strong models that received the same education that I received gave me confidence. And I could transmit this confidence to my students and to the community. So at present, in the Argentinian Astronomical Association that was founded in 1958, 50%, when I said graduate student, it's graduate student and postdocs. It's not completely correct there, and postdocs. And 50% are female. Among the professionals, 37%, and honorary, all these like us, like me, is 37%. So in total, we are almost half of the community of astronomers. And even when there is a decrease from postdocs and graduate students to professionals, it's not exactly, we don't see. Sorry? Also, the president of the association and 50% of the board of the association are women. And at the National Astronomical Commission, that is the liaison with the IAU, the president and 60% are women. I don't know what happened. Oh. Okay. Are we present in decision-making positions in institutions dedicated to astronomy? Well, at the observatory, we have 7 or 8 different places in Argentina, observatories and institutes where it is carried out research related to astronomy and astrophysics. At the Observatory of Córdoba, even when they had these women working from the beginning, well, it took 150 years to decide that a woman could be the director. And she is now, Dr. Mercedes Gomez is now the director, and also the deputy director is a woman. And at my institute, we were two women as directors, both for during 9 years. The first one, Dr. Rovira, 1995 to 2004, and she left to be the president of the main organism for science and technology in the country, the National Council. And I ran the institute during 9 years also. The other places are waiting for women. Talking about the National Council of Scientific and Technological Research, CONICET, that is like CNRS, CONICET is the council that groups all the scientific, or most of the scientific research of the country in the different branches. Even, I compare with the number given by UNESCO, that 30% of researchers of all disciplines in the world are women. In CONICET, in our country, we have 54%. The graph moving from left to right is going up in the career. And blue are women, brown are men. So even when at beginning there are more women than men, then in the middle here, the ages of this group are around between, say, 40 and 55, for example, or 35 to 55. But then we start decreasing. And finally, but I'm talking about all science, not astronomy here. Finally, at the top, there are very few women. For example, in the whole history of CONICET, I was the first woman that reached this level in astronomy. They took them 50 years to think that there were women working. And it's interesting. I'm also a member of the National Academy of Exact Physical and Natural Science of Argentina. I'm part of the Women for Science program of the network of all academies of science of America. And in Argentina, I conducted a survey, this is from the year 2023, that was answered by more than 300 women scientists working in different areas. And it's interesting, but because to the question of what action they believe that would improve the development of their careers, we obtained the following responses. 89% wanted daycare in their workplaces. We are Latin mommies, remember, and we want to take care close of our children, and maternity leave is only 3 months. And the case is that we don't want to face career versus family. We want to have everything, career and family, and go back to the work when we have to, and see that our children are well cared. Of course, the second part was better salaries and more funding for research. This is the permanent problem. I have to add something, a peculiarity in Argentina. In CONICET, you can ask for long-term contracts after you finish the postdoc. So it's not very, very difficult to get long-term contracts. And the university, for example, designation as professor lasts for 7 years. So the problem are salaries and funding for research. 71% prefer flexible work schedules because after your children grew up and there is no babies in daycare, you still need time for home cares and the children. Protocols for situations of violence was another request, 36%. And very few requested for 3% quotas for leadership positions, 1% for special awards and prizes for women in science to recognize the role of women in the research. And I already mentioned extension for maternity leave. Here is not an option, not yet, that we selected by the father or the mother. Our association within the astronomical community, we carried out some gender actions. There are summer programs for students encouraging women to apply for them. This is the way to attract them to the area. In the year 2020, it was created the Gender and Equity Commission in charge of dealing with harassment and any kind of discrimination based on the gender or disparity, and it works. And here is a funny story. In 2022, it was created the prize in honor of Dr. Virginia Mela with her name to recognize outstanding female careers in astronomy, just to give visibility to the production and to try to correct the leaky pipeline that we noticed, even with a not very market, but we noticed for the highest position. But one member of the association was against, requested that this prize was withdrawn because he said that it violated human rights principle that men and women are the same, are all equal. But when it was voted again, the proposal to keep the prize was unanimously supported. So it still exists. At national level, there were several transformative actions in science and technology. In the year 2019, Argentina had for the first time a Ministry of Women, Gender, and Diversity. And from that ministry, several laws, just hearing for this group, several laws were approved. And also it was created the Ministry of Science, Technology, and Innovation that in the year 2020 creates this ministry, a program, a very interesting program, Gender Equality in Science, Technology, and Innovation. I am proud of saying that I was part of the advisory committee of this program. And the webpage of this program still exists. If there is in Spanish, I'm sorry. But from this program, several measures were taken. The idea, the goal were to make scientific and technological institutions, environments conducive to development, equality, ambient, with equality and free of violence. To to promote the incorporation of gender perspective in research, development, and innovation processes from the very design. And another purpose was to promote equity for women and LGBTI plus population in access to hierarchical and or decision-making positions. And they have good actions, as I saw. Some of them, well, the first one, training Ley Micaela, was named with the name of a girl suffered harassment and was killed. This law from the national government indicated mandatory gender training for all persons working in the 3 branches of government. Every civil personnel had to take and approve a course about this gender law. And from the Ministry of Science and Technology, they created allowance for expenses for care tests when a woman attended scientific meeting. And she had to take children or elder people at the house in other hands and pay for support. So they provided economic support to attend scientific meetings for women in charge of persons, children under 12 years, persons with disabilities, or elderly people with whom they live part-time or full-time and require specific assistance. And they provide a manual with advice for the adaptation of the rules for calls for national, scientific, and technological awards, the incorporation of non-sexist and inclusive language in the calls for proposals, award submission process and eligibility conditions, evaluation by balance commissions, etc. Because they noticed that in the statistics of prizes, national prizes, there were many, many men, and they were lacking of women. So they said, we have to change the rules of the calls of contest. But in 1993, I had to say, we had elections in Argentina, and the new president with an anti-woke agenda dissolved both ministries, all programs were canceled. We are living under an anti-feminist politics and anti-science. So, until now, I showed that there were not very serious effect, leaky pipeline effect. But with, because with 3 national universities teaching astronomy and several more faculties of physics and mathematics, there is a good population of young scientists interested in doing a career in astronomy. And so, and they have a permanent position, so they remain in the career. But unfortunately, with the new policies where science is not a priority and very low salaries and without funding to work, young people, and I have to say both male and female, leave science or leave the country in search for better horizons. So I don't know how will be our future. What I can say is that role models, having women leading groups, having women leading institutions, is very strong. It's very strong to attract more women. It's very strong to show that the glass ceiling can be broken. It's good, for example, for women leading research groups, even for small groups. It's more easy for other women just come and say, I have to take my child to the pediatrician. Please, I will leave earlier now. it's more easy to talk and explain human situations and explain that we need to cut this meeting now because I have to pick up my child from school or everything. So if, I think that Argentina is a good example that role models or presence bring good solutions. Thank you.
Thank you very much for this interesting talk and all the efforts that you have been carrying out over several years. That is really remarkable. Thank you again. Do we have questions for Gloria? She has to leave, so if you have questions, please ask her. One thing that I had heard quite a lot when we talk about Argentina and the statistics and why there are more women astronomers in this community, people have been talking about the fact that the salaries are less. As a result,
so everybody has same salary.
It's very good. Okay, because
salary is independent of gender, either in universities or observatories. Connie said salary does not depend on the gender.
Very good. Yeah.
I have to add something that at the selection committees to give positions or fellowships, but it's mandatory to have 50% of women at the chair. 50% of all selection committees have to be women.
That's a very important factor. That's exactly what even Luca mentioned in his talk. And that really adds to creating this balanced environment. So that's good. And indeed, your point was very important that right in the beginning, you had role models. Of course, they were the wives of the directors, but at least they were there. And that gave hope to other women to pick up this career. And that has played
to see other women in the halls and working. And it makes a difference.
Exactly. It creates a kind of feeling of a safe environment, a welcoming environment where you can go on and conduct whatever work you want to do, and you will find people like you in the room.
And if he could, I can, something like that.
Exactly. Exactly. Thank you. Any questions for Gloria?
Yes. Hi, Gloria.
Hi, Giovanna.
Hi, Mama. Hi. Hi. Thank you very much for the talk and the numbers. I work with early career astronomers, women and men, and I'm seeing more and more a trend that younger people are just realizing that outside academia there are as many interesting as jobs, and they are even better paid. And I think that the numbers give us a vision of our world, but actually we should start also to speak more with people and young people and understand that they don't like to travel very much anymore. One of the points of Argentina that you said, it was very clear, I think, in your statistics, is that the people studied in Argentina and had the possibility to continue working in Argentina. So the funding were there. But nowadays, here in the Netherlands, we're starting to have many more women. Now we are in the frozen status, so we cannot hire anybody. But then we have a lot of postdocs who are coming, and they love the Netherlands. But at a certain point, the pyramid is there. These are the funding. This is the money available. And at a certain point, they realize, I don't want to leave. I don't want to travel again. I don't want to find a job somewhere else. I leave. And also the fact, that we have also to think that there is a period in the life of a woman in which the woman has to be free to decide if she wants to work full time and ask to somebody else to educate and raise their children, or if we want to work part-time. And that option of part-time in astronomy doesn't exist. And this is the first point.
Yes.
The part-time is a good key.
It's only, well, I have to say that after a postdoc, a successful postdoc abroad, until now, or until the present president, people went back to the country and applied for a permanent position and had it, could get it. I don't know now, because people who was accepted to work with a permanent position at CONICET and that are working now outside, abroad, in different countries, they say, well, I don't want to go back because I will not have funding, I'm very well here, etc., etc. So we lost people that were paid by the government during at least 5 years to complete a PhD. They received a fellowship, they were paid, and now they don't want to go back. I have to say that because of my age, I crossed 3 big crises in Argentina. Military dictatorship, where people left the country to save their lives. Hyperinflation, where suddenly the money was cut by 10 to the 4. The change was 10 to the 4. 10,000 pesos cost 1 peso. Moved to, and it was a disaster for science, a disaster with all subscription cut, all travel cut, everything. And the people couldn't work with those salaries. For a professional, a salary of about $200 per month, and incredible hyperinflation. And another one in the year 2001 when was a big crisis. I saw that the country recovered and the people come back. So I had some hopes for the future if things change. However, I noticed during this crisis that the percentage of women in astronomy in Argentina sometimes was the highest of the world. Why is that? They have, because women stay in the country because they have to take care of the parents, the elder people in the family. They can't leave immediately the family and change the country. And because women can live with lower salaries if their husbands have better incomes. So during many years, I used my whole salary to pay the person who was taking care of my house and children. Okay. So 75% of my salary I worked for to work, because I said, if I leave the train now, I'm not going to recover soon. Science goes too fast. I need to keep connected. But this is a serious problem. Even when I have to say that there is governmental support. For example, there are daycares at the universities, University of La Plata, University of Buenos Aires. 100 meters from my office, there are a beautiful kindergarten. But the house, the homework, all the children when are growing up and go to school and dentists, doctors, football, dance, etc., that every woman will recognize, they need mommy or somebody at home taking care. And we cannot work out part-time. It's very difficult. You can't work. You can't just cut the meeting with your partners in the United States and in Australia saying, okay, we are deciding the next observations, but I have to leave now because in my house they need me. It's a problem. I don't have an answer for that. What I can say is that somehow we manage. Once I was presented a paper, at the VLA. It was communicated. That was just an invited talk at the VLA. We were 4 authors, and somebody asked me, do you have children? And I said, I have 3. And with the 3 other co-authors, we have 10 in total. So we were 4 mothers producing a a very interesting paper that people at the VLA were interested in asking me to give a talk. So we can. Okay, it's
if I can reply shortly, this is a different historical period, and women are different, and astronomy has to change with the society just a bit.
yes.
It will not do it, but this can have very bad repercussions on the quality of the people that we will have in the coming years, and also on the amount of women. It is true that in astronomy we can work part-time now, but it is possible because, you know, we have the flexibility.
Yes.
Even if I am not in the office, I can still working if I want in the evenings or sometimes on a Sunday. We all worked on a Sunday. We all did it. So if we can, my provocation, I know it's a provocation, but I would love that people, women are allowed, but also fathers are allowed to put in their CV their maternity leaving time. And that time is appreciated and valorized because that time gave us skills, real skills, that sometimes people with no children didn't have the possibility to develop. And once we start to admit this and we start to put in the CV, then we can see probably things will change because, I mean, why shouldn't it be revolutionary? We are smart and innovative, so why shouldn't we think out of the box? Only because it was done before in a way doesn't mean that we don't have to change it.
Thank you for this.
Yes, yes, it's very important just to change.
I'm sorry, I have to stop you at this stage,
Yes.
but we'll take over with Gloria. We can always write to her. She is always replying everybody so that she's not out of reach from us. So please do that. And we'll go ahead with the next talk of the session. Thank you very much, Gloria, again. But I must say that it's not another generation what you have faced. And as you said that you had to pay the salary, your salary to the caretaker. That's exactly what I have been doing for the last first 10 years since my children were born. So I was really working for the person who was taking care of the children and for the kindergarten to pay the thing. And I had to work even unpaid to continue with my career, to keep, as you said, to keep, to be into the research and keep the train. So, and that lasted also for 6 years, 7 years. So it's not a joke. So yeah, it's hard. Right, so we'll stop here now and we will go ahead with the next speaker of the session, and that is Professor Jessica Dempsey. She's here. We are very happy and we are really privileged to have her here. She's the director of Astronomy, major radio astronomy facility in the world. She's also a world-renowned scientist and has successfully led astronomical institutions in complex international environments. So she has a rich experience of dealing with very complicated workplace, I must say. And so I'm sure this is what we want to hear from her. And she has a very active attitude towards inclusion, equality, and diversity. And I think the best proof of that is the fact that since she took up this director position, she initiated the Bell Burnell Fellowship to support the career of women astronomers. And that's really appreciable. And I mean, we are impressed with that part, and we want to hear more about the impact of that. So Jessica, please take over.
Thank you very much, and it's a great honor to be here. And I was really glad, both hearing Gloria just now, that was amazing, but also to hear Luca, because in fact, one of my examples in here was, in fact, of course, the excellent work that has been done there at ANU. So I will not be talking about that now. I'll talk about something more interesting. So I want to dive in a little deeper. Can you see my screen?
Yes, we can.
Excellent. So I think there was a comment in the chat, which I really resonated with, which was, can we go a bit beyond just the statistics? And one of the things that I spent a lot of time thinking about in what I feel is a vocation for me alongside my science and alongside loving to lead observatories and astronomy organizations is what's behind the problem. What is the psychology? Why do we have such difficulty in initiating what seems to us to be very obvious kinds of changes? And we're scientists, so why can't we fix this? So I do want to dive a little bit today beyond just the statistics and start talking about the psychology of change and the psychology of how entrenched concepts are really, really difficult to move the needle on. So I will start with a few statistics, but especially because there's been such an excellent set of examples that have come before me, I'm going to run over the top of my stats fairly quickly. And some of them, as I said, are examples that have already been shown. And I want to go from those statistics to say why. Why is this a problem? Can we now understand and resonate not just in astronomy or in science, but more broadly, what is the truth of resistance to changes? And then, of course, the other add part of that, which is not just numbers, but what is the psychology of how we build leaders and champions who actually can overcome those resistances. This is a book that I don't recommend that you read on a day when you're already feeling miserable. It is, in fact, very, very intensive, but it is excellent summary of the problem of missing women in data. And we know that women are left out of fields, but we are also left out of data sets themselves. Some of the examples that we see in this book include things you might be familiar with. One of them is cars are less safe for women than for men. In fact, 71% less safe because the dummy that they use in their crash tests is a 50th percentile man. Some of the examples of that are even more shocking. One of my least favorite is the fact that a sexual dysfunction drug was tested for its interaction with alcohol. Now, this was meant to be for women, but they tested it on 23 men and only 2 women. We are also aware in medicine that there is both a data gap and a male-based curriculum, and this already leaves women 50% more likely to be diagnosed if they have a heart attack. And the one which is just coming home to roost for us now in this age of AI is that AI has been shown to have such strong biases against women when reviewing everything that now we have to have a barrier and get through an AI, from CVs to credit scores and other judgment barriers. Nearly 70% of cases, in fact, I haven't updated this slide, some of the most recent numbers are showing now as much as 85% bias in the new AIs. And so she has a lot of good quotes in the book, but the thing I think she's saying is that this gender gap is not generally malicious. It's not even deliberate. In fact, it's the opposite. It's been around for so long, it's almost a not thinking. In fact, it's a double not thinking because, one, men go without saying and women don't get said at all. Because when we say human on the whole, we mean man. And so again, I won't go through the statistics. This is a particularly powerful plot for me because, of course, it goes across a whole different range of professions. But you can see, and years is here, I've made it big in the top so that you can see it. This is how long a particular profession is going to take before it is gender equitable with the current trends. And you see here that even with all of our current initiatives, 150 years is about the amount of time that it will take. And in fact, there's been a reanalysis of this post-pandemic. In fact, some of these times to gender equity have increased rather than decreased. And computer science there is one of the ones where I think the number is now in the 800 to 900 years from now. Interestingly, nursing, you'll notice, has the longest time to equity, but that is gender flipped. Just so that we have at least a little bit of balance in our off-balance statistics here. So these are the ones that I'm going to run through pretty quickly because I am telling you things that you already know. We know scientific academia has this problem. We know that it's not in just one particular region. We know that these things get worse as you get more senior. And this is another one of my tidbits from this book. According to a recent study, male academics, and particularly those in the hard sciences, rated fake research claiming that academia had no gender bias higher than real research, which showed it did. So this is where we have to start remembering perhaps we're not the scientists we think we are. Perhaps there's some psychological biases that are coming in when we're trying to make what we think are unvalued judgments. Again, we also know the reasons women leave, and this is something which has just been talked about at a lot of length, so I'm not going to talk about this in any great detail. So we know the statistics are there, we know the reasons people leave. We also know, and this is just a summary from what Luca was talking about in great length, we also know it's better to have teams which are good. We know that these things work. So all of these things, and the final part I will say is, and this is what Luca was talking about at length, we also know we can make initiatives to make these changes. So making argumentations that, oh, it's a bit difficult, or, or maybe that works for you. We know all of these reasons mentally. We know the numbers. We know what initiatives are needed in order to shift the barriers. So why, if all of this is the case, if we as scientists know all of these things are true, why are we not managing to move the needle faster? This has been the thing that I've been trying to think of as a leader of these sorts of organizations, as someone who finds a very passionate need to address these balances, particularly because I love to champion our younger generation, and I want you guys to be having those equal opportunities. And so one of the reasons we want to increase female representation, we want to do it everywhere, because as women move into positions of power or influence, we see something else. And it's really simple. Women simply don't forget that women exist as easily or as often as men do. So this is another reason why having role models and having people in places who are thinking about this is very simple. It's remembering both of the genders, just remembering them equally, is sometimes another reason why you do want women to be in positions of leadership. So I'm going to now start to tip into the psychology. We know these studies say all of these things. We know, and we don't have to point fingers or say it's of malicious intent. We don't think this is consciously done. In fact, I think we show actually that most of these things aren't. But we know that there's a dominantly single demographic who is making decisions over science, is making decisions over who gets to do it. And this is where you start to worry. If we're not good psychologists, in fact, we assume in normal science, the activity in which most scientists spend almost all their time is predicated on the assumption the scientific community knows what the world is like. And if you remember, we like to think that we're experts in everything. I always point out there are dangers of thinking you're an expert in everything. This was one of my favorite little mishaps by an astrophysicist during the start of the pandemic. But the fact is, we haven't got expertise across the realms that actually we need them if we are actually going to be able to be emotionally intelligent, socially aware, and aware of the things we need in ourselves and others in order to really make tangible change. When someone says his conclusions are objective, he means that they are based on prejudices which many other people share. That is the actual assessment that I look at when you try and look at why there is resistance to making changes in a group or in a society. So I'm going to talk about this in the framework of a hashtag I call #MeNext. This is a specific example because I talk about the quiet fears that silence the Me Too movement, but it can be taken more broadly to understand why we don't gain traction with equity. We have to look beyond statistics to the psychology of fear. What is MeNext? I can't actually believe that I've been giving versions of this for a little while, but we are now nearly a decade on from the hashtag #MeToo. This was started in a Twitter, evolved into this movement, and the protests and conversations were really pervasive. Suddenly we had all of these different statistics, these reports popping up. So as an example, up to 88% of women in scientific fields reporting harassment. But the same reason that it was foundational as a movement is the same reason it got system-wide resistance. If you unify enough of a marginalized group around a common issue to pressure the system, this means it finally is successful in threatening the power holders in that system. Other examples I would point out to is the Black Lives Matter movement, for example. So did we succeed with Me Too? Remember, there were many high-profile cases, or celebrity cases, there was cases in science. Following that, there was a wave of policies. There was codes of conduct, there was harassment prevention, there were networks for reporting victims. A lot of good did come out of those initial phases of the Me Too movement. And then you started to see the Me Next rise. And this is just a single example that I give, and this was a moment that I remember very vividly when Brett Kavanaugh in the US was being grilled for this his Supreme Court session, these allegations that came up from Christine Blasey Ford. And this was allegations in front of Congress. And this was an example I see of the signs of the Me Next movement happening. Ford was incredibly powerful. She was calm, she's vulnerable, she's a highly educated woman, she was incredibly believable. In addition, in comparison, this future Supreme Court judge was aggressive, he was petulant, he was childish, he was self-righteous, and he won. And so this was when I kind of coined in my head Me Next, because Me Next wasn't him. Me Next was the guys on the panel. It was them and their fear in the room that meant that it didn't matter what she said, he was always going to be victorious because of their fear that they would be the next ones potentially accused. You may be familiar with some of these phrases that might have happened, or these conversations that you might have had during some of these eras. Is this true? Did this happen to you? Maybe just tell me your version of this. I just need more proof this is happening. And then you start to hear the defensive ones. Maybe now I'm not sure I'm even allowed to talk to a woman at all. And the one at the bottom and the kicker. My worry is now anyone can report for no reason and just damage someone because they feel like it. This false reporting myth is one of the first tangible examples you start to see of Me Next and this resistance to change. We actually know, back to statistics, that the rate of false report is at least less than 2%. Some new legal experts say it's far, far lower than that. The quote you'll see there on the right-hand side, which I will not repeat, out of He Who Shall Not Be Named, really does encapsulate how effective this argument is against meaningful change. And back to this whole thing of how malicious is it? It really isn't malicious at all when you look at the psychology. It's the sympathy for the man in the mirror. These progresses in social safety are held up by decision makers who have unconscious empathy towards more likely the accused than the victim. So we have implicit bias towards those like ourselves. And so it's really hard for male leaders to empathize with female victims. In worse, they're feeling traumatized, and so they feel defensive. So appeasement of these fair hearings is not just common, but it is the majority response for a reason. Has Me Next gained momentum? Unfortunately, it has. We've seen all of these things happening, and I won't list them down here, but I will say, in and above themselves, the ban on DEI in the US is Me Next victorious. Why are we going backwards? Instead of wringing our hands and getting depressed about it, we can do that too. I'm interested in asking the why. Let's understand what's happening here. The missing here is most physics and astronomy have used objectivity to avoid social and ethical frameworks. Codes of conduct are being standard. Misconduct cases are more likely to be reported. So they are more likely to happen to women, and we are nearly, even if we do all of this, we are nearly entirely unsuccessful in adjudicating the cases which do come up to us. We are still lacking the fundamental training to be able to navigate these well. Why? I think that all comes down to fear. I'm going to start talking now about fear when you are dealing with confronting information. And there are multiple kinds of fear which you are actually going to be having to wrestle with. But four of the most driving ones that drive people to fear reactions in these cases: fear of failure, fear of loss of control or power, fear of damage to self-image, fear of criticism. And so I'm going to give you an example here of how two different ways to navigate through a confronting conversation and how fear demonstrations will actually occur. When you are in a conversation or you've seen a conversation, you might see some of these. forcing someone with an uncomfortable message to back down on their point, a yes, but, extremist rebuttal, not all men, shifting responsibility. You can't expect me to solve all of these problems. And the really big one at the end, since you think so little of me, there's no point continuing this conversation. Departure as a punishment is a tool of the powerful, because the simple and the most effective way to kill progress is to leave the conversation. So when those people in power delay or cease the discussion, the least and the most damaging lasting path, the least damaging, most lasting path to social change is lost. So the most important thing you can do is to monitor in yourself when you might be leaving a vital change-making process because it's uncomfortable for you. So the first trick is finding it in yourself and then seeing it in others. So let's say you've been sitting in a talk like this and you've heard a message that you didn't like. Something in what someone has just said has really triggered you. Okay, the front thought is, that made me uncomfortable. The back thought is, okay, I don't like that feeling. I want it to stop. That's the fear response. The fear-driven thinking is, the person who told me this is somehow causing this. I was fine before they said this. I need to stop them, and I need to make them be sorry for making me feel this way. The action based on that feeling will be something you might have heard or seen in some of these sorts of confronting conversations. They'll focus on a detail. You'll focus on a detail that you want to find fault with. You'll attack the tone, the wording, the minutiae. There'll be extremist arguments like not all men. There'll be an ad hominem attack. These are the actions based on the fear of, I didn't like the message that you were giving me and it made me feel bad. Now, these things will then escalate if you're not paying attention. This is a topic that 45 minutes ago you'd never heard of and you didn't care about, but now you are going to die on this hill. You need to win to feel less uncomfortable. You need to make this person sorry. They have to soothe you. You have to make that speaker apologize and backtrack. So this is an example of how a fear spiral and a reaction, which on the surface might sound all very detailed and very important, is actually a fear-based reaction. So what would be the alternative? That made me uncomfortable. This is making me upset, unusually upset. Perhaps this is triggering something in me. Let me take a moment to think about why. Some options: a deep breath, delay that initial response. That's always my first advice. And before reacting at all, say, is my question or the comment, which I'm going to make sound like a question, or my reaction adding to the conversation? Or am I making this about me? And if you want to level up and be a champion in this, you can say, is a contribution now necessary from me? Can I help others in the room move to a more constructive place as well? Because leadership matters. Those decisions matter. We know leaders setting the standards for behavior in organizations really can move the needle. And they're the ones who are the gatekeepers to all of this substantial change. So how do we turn gatekeepers into champions? We need to ask people in leadership roles to evolve beyond their own fear-based decisions. That's how we move to really big change. And the first one is just looking for people. Can you just stay in the room while we have these conversations? I was having a quick look around the demographics, or the guest demographics just in this talk, and I'll give an example there of who else can we drag in to these conversations who really need to hear conversations like this. And the first rule of thumb when you're looking for this fear-based stuff is reminding yourself that it's never about you, even though suddenly you do feel personally attacked. So being able to analyze that, being able to say, am I being honest about myself right now? Am I worried about how I'm looking? Or how I'm being thought about, or can I advance this to a good outcome regardless? And starting by checking in, getting external guidance and groups can start to get you to a place where you can see whether you're reacting from fear or not, and then find your own compass. This is one of my favorite ones just for today. I thought it was appropriate to bring it back. The search rates for International Men's Day peak on International Women's Day. So this would be another search blip that we will be seeing tomorrow. And it gives you an example. This is a fear-based Google search. The second thing you can do is you can hold two truths at once. Everyone is the hero of our own story. You can step aside from that. You can step aside from that ego and you can see that acknowledging everyone is the same or worse, better is not an important thing here. You can have both. You can be aware of your own intentions, have done good things, and still accept that you might represent a minority or a group or a culture that has harmed and continues to harm others. Those things can coexist. And so you can be a good person and trust that if you're in leadership, you can also represent some of the things which you actually find are quite awful. And so once leaders start to go to there, then you can do something called shifting. And shifting is moving from that closed and defensive space to being curious, to being open, from wanting to just win, to want to learn, or fighting from some survival of ego to a place where you can actually lead in trust and security. And this is, I'm not going to go through this in a lot of detail. I'd like to open up for chats in a minute. There are ways to break fear cycles and hope. Hope is actually the major thing which breaks these up, but it has to be continued and agreed and a cooperative practice. And so it takes time and consistency to do really big change. But the most important thing, I would say, you need leadership. You need existing leaders who have support to really get the things moving in the direction you need. And I'll be frank, males and men are the gatekeepers to a lot of this true success. They are solutions to balanced experience. And providing the training and support to give men the tools they need, as well as the women, is really one of the fastest ways to move the needle on some of these changes and to keep them from sliding back and from these me next from happening. So how do we incentivize doing the work to achieve equity in science is a question that I'm still chasing. So we've already mentioned, I'm so glad, as I said, I can show that with Luca, beyond 40%, you start to get these gains to be self-sustaining. We do know women in leadership roles accelerate this, but creating leaders, both men and women, who are incentivized to continue this work, well, I would say that that is absolutely essential to making the change that we need. And that's it from me.
Thank you very much. That was really enjoyable and excellent. I really enjoyed the talk, and the way you have put in all the ways actually we can bring the change is great. I think everyone has got a lot of questions to ask, but I would just go ahead because you're talking about me next movement. So what happens, for example, if you can imagine that you have a person who is facing all sorts of discrimination over several years, a typical women researcher, and like we have been hearing until now, and she comes up in open, and as you say, because we are talking about me next movement here, that she comes up and she says what she's facing openly in the National Astronomical Meeting. Mm-hmm. And the fact that you also very well explained, that it's not that aggressive guy who was in this slide, who was basically, he was basically the faulty guy, but he was reacting on behalf of all the other members. And so that's the kind of situation happens. And this woman, she gets back all this very non-supportive and very arrogant reaction. Yep. From community members, from the organizers of the session. Yep. But the session itself holds the main idea of the session is to develop and is to support and talk about diversity, but exactly opposite situation or scenario is created when the real thing is expressed honestly and openly. Because this person has been said for over several years, don't report anything, you are going to upset the people in power or the committee members, etc., etc. What do you suggest in such a situation? Should the women come up and talk? Whatever the person has done or should be doing is correct way of approach of dealing with the things, or just be quiet and don't upset anybody?
Well, you can do it many ways. You sound like you describe an exact situation. I have seen this happen many times. That's why I can say that these things happen all the time. So there's a few ways. One of the ways I do it now, if I'm going to talk about a difficult topic into what I think might be a hostile crowd, walking through those fear-based decisions, I actually use that slide. If I give this talk in front of, I've given it quite a few times, I have never had a bad or hostile reaction afterwards. Why? Because everyone's sitting there going, am I reacting from fear? I don't want to react from fear. So actually putting this at the front and saying, I'm about to talk about a controversial topic. You might feel a bit weird about it. Calling them out, and therefore then if they're hostile or overreacting, everyone else in the room is like, see what's going on here. So that's actually one way of doing it. And the other way is you need some male champions in the room. There is nothing better than another man standing up in the room and turning around to the applicant saying, that's not okay, right? Or simply, and even if it's not passive, it's going, wow, you poor thing. You're so scared right now. I'm sorry I've made you so uncomfortable. Right, so there's a few ways to do it. My preference, the two ways I've found effective, is to talk about it at the start, to simply say, I expect some people to be very uncomfortable in the room. I'm going to ask for you to think about why you might be reacting in this way before you speak. Does a lot. And then I would also say, I have done this when I'm giving some talks. I will have a couple of champions or allies of my own in the room to say, are you ready with your, and so I have to admit to this one, I've actually had stooges in the audience who'll be the first one with their hand up to come up and be, as a man, I feel quite uncomfortable with what you said because of these. So actually outing themselves, you cannot do more for a woman talking on stage than that. That's my best advice when I'm training male champions, is doing something like that. So if you're going into something with a really challenging message, I would never put a woman up there to do that if I didn't have her have backup in a room to make sure that she is protected. We put everyone out there in too vulnerable a space to let that happen.
That's great. Thank you. Right, so let's open the stage for others. Do you have questions? Now we are in the Q&A and discussion session. So please go ahead.
I would like this slide to be shared among us because it would be really useful. And I have just also some piece of advice. Never do this kind of statements by your own. I mean, there's comfort in numbers. So if you got a number of people, women, stating the same, then it would be more difficult for other people in the room, women or male, because there are women that also had this.
Yes.
Yes, there is some safety in numbers. I've always just felt we shouldn't have to. One of my frustrations with statistics is how many slides do you guys need, right, before we get the message? It's one of the reasons I sort of stopped starting to deal with the numbers and start to try and dig under it a bit, because that's when you start to understand where the places are to really move the needle. And it is unfortunate that you could go and find 5 or 6 women who have had the experience. But again, we shouldn't be having to fight these battles just on the numbers or on the actual story. I mean, one of the my feedback when I was having a lot of these conversations during MeNext with the people, can you tell me your story? I'm like, look, you shouldn't have to have my pain to make you a better person. And so it's one of my struggles with this, is that I want to move us beyond the performative space of having to tell a lot more of these stories in order to suddenly realize that this is a problem.
Yeah, I just was talking about the people stating this in an audience.
Yes.
If you don't have a champion on your side, then you can't be alone over there. Yes,
I agree with you.
That makes you really vulnerable. So you have to be some.
Yeah, the point is, you see, when these kind of sessions happen, like Women in Astronomy, in every national astronomical community, societies, whatever, it's really to talk about the problems that they are facing. And when the problems are really being said, then people don't want to listen to it. They just want to show, oh, we are doing a good job. We have put this training program, we have put that statistics, and everything is going fine. But they don't want to hear the real stories. But that's the real theme of that session, isn't it? So you have to be open to listen and to receive the real stories so that you can perhaps, make your policies foolproof and acceptable for the people. And so they feel trust in you. That's the point. Otherwise, the trust is gone. And when there's no trust, of course, women are going to leave the field because they are having enough on their head already. They are working part-times. They are working unpaid. They are feeling harassed. They are being suppressed to speak. Their research work is being stolen. And of course, they're not being paid enough correctly or given part-time jobs. On top of that, they are facing all these problems. So how much? And then they have the caretaking responsibility and children and all sorts of family responsibilities. So that's that's quite a lot of thing to handle. So there was one more question, for example, and that's for Jessica again. Do you feel women lack confidence?
I think that there is still a lot of yeah, I mean half of the mentoring that I do is about like saying, lady, you're amazing, you're incredible, where is this insecurity coming from? And so much of that I find in my experience with them is entrenched in sense of, when I'm like, you just did this amazing thing, why are you apologizing for it? And those are all societal trainings that women get. To be less, to make yourself less in the room, to not take up space. And it rarely is it just a personality trait. That's I guess my finding. And even people who are quieter, shy, introverted, neurodivergent, you can train out of somebody those societal norms. And I think that I used to have an apology jar in my office, which is anyone has to put money in there every time they apologize for no reason. It's amazing how quickly people stop apologizing for themselves. And I get my beer money, so it works out for everybody. But you have to make people aware that these things aren't behaviors, that they don't deserve less. And so no, I think it's a general trend. I do see a generational shift, which I'm really happy about. I am seeing our young and earlier career women with less of this problem. So that firstly really makes me ecstatic. But it's still a hard path for them. So I see some of that confidence getting knocked out of them right when we need to be giving it to them the most. So that's sort of, for me, one of the things of those no gaps pipeline area. Really, most of it has to do with confidence. And you really touched on something else important, which is quality of life, quality of experience. When you are up against, cultural decisions and major issues in order to have that career, any one of them isn't enough, but they add up to a sum of this is all too hard. And so for me, you've just got to throw all of them at the wall at once and make sure, that's the only real path to success. And I think I don't accept the idea that change has to be slow. I'm actually the other way around. I'm like, throw all of the changes in at once and have a big shock to the system. And then you get to what Luca was talking about, that 40% number faster. You can get rid of all of these biased measures, these affirmative actions, because you don't need them anymore. And that really, I think, is a better path. But then you do risk these backlashes, and that's where you have to be aware of these fear cycles.
Yeah, exactly. That's the point. And that's a very much tested formula and it's working. So why not implement it everywhere if you're really concerned about it? And if you really want to show that there is gender balance in your institution, you need to do some efforts. And instead of just talking about it on 8th of March and that's it, and then forget, which is what is happening. Any further questions? But I have one more question, and that is when we talk about gender disparity or gender imbalance at workplace, and when we see a rise in poor work conditions and mental health issues at workplace, do you think there is some kind of, connection between these two factors or no?
Well, I have to say to you, as in having worked and done winter overs in Antarctica, the mental health of a closed system of people definitely depends on the gender balance. So once you've worked in those extremes, and in fact, I did psychology testing of many of the bases. Some of them are still male only, the Russian base, for example. We had 8 women and 65 men. So that was quite a pressured system. But I do also happen to know the other as well, which is the Germans tried an all-women base for one of their winters, and that went badly, very badly. So it is about, the psychological balance, pressures of having big gender imbalances in these systems matters. And they've shown it's just not along gender boundaries as well. Yes. So having a representative sample of your community in your organizational system makes it healthier. It makes those emotional resonances easier. And they're more likely to be retained as well. So you're less likely to see losses and people leaving when you have those healthier representative systems.
Right. Okay, thank you. Yes, any further questions for Jessica or for other panel members? Luca is here as well, so please ask him if you have any questions. Okay, so he has to leave because he has to get his kids. Okay, all right, to school. Then one more question is because we have also all sorts of younger members attending this session. What would you suggest to people who, like we heard from Gloria's talk, or like from my personal experience, that when you have children and when you have family responsibilities, you end up taking any position, underpaid or unpaid, in order to continue with your career.
Mm-hmm.
And you want to do that because you don't want to lose the train, because things are advancing very quickly and you will be too late if you join later and take a complete break. So the question is, would you suggest people to continue to do these kind of choices? Or would you suggest they want to be beside their country, because of their family in their country, because they want support from the family as well, because they have family responsibilities. So would you suggest not to follow this path and go ahead only for paid conditions and change the career completely? Or should we just go ahead and face the situation and accept it?
There's no way I'd ever suggest or advise people to put themselves into a horrible situation or to leave a career for the same reasons. These are always deeply personal choices. Expecting to sacrifice for careers. Well, I hear everyone in astronomy say that, but most of the guys I know are not talking about the same things that the women are talking about. So there is a real difference of experience there, and no one should have to be miserable, and no one should have to compromise. But the reality is, I've always said, is that, if you want to die on that hill, you can, as in leave, but you leaving the system isn't going to change the system. On the other hand, staying in the system and accepting all of the horribleness also won't change the system. So in both cases, they're personal choices based on what you are prepared to endure and what you are prepared to, like, what are the most important things for you. However, that's why you have to focus on who are the people who can actually move the needle. And I'll be honest with you, I was ready to jump ship as well. Especially in sort of a deputy role, where a lot of people, when I was talking about this stuff, were coming to me with their cases, and I couldn't do anything about it. That impotence to be able to actually change things for people was the reason I'm in scientific leadership. Like, the only way I found to actually move the needle and put an umbrella over people is to be in a position of power. And so finding for yourself, who are your champions, male or female, above you, right? Making sure they're aware, right? They can't exclude ignorance. I have a lot of really great male friends in astronomy who I just call clueless allies. And just giving them, hey, you could have done this in this situation, would have made a hell of a lot of difference. So having and making sure you're communicating to people who are safe. My experience is different than this. You could do a lot to help here. and empowering people to be those champions, that you can still do from within the system. So for me, that's some advice for people who are staying in it and maybe are suffering because you're trying to get through it despite all of these things in their career. But I would never tell people to put themselves in harm's way. It just shouldn't happen. But someone tried to tell me the other day, you can't save every puppy at the pound, and I'm like, well, I'm going to try. But it's definitely, it has to be a personal choice.
Any further questions for Jessica? I guess not. We had a very successful session until now. I am glad we had really good speakers who have really opened up their hearts about the matter, and this is what is the real success of this session. We had great talks. One final question again from my side: how important it is for policymakers, journals, review journals, funding agencies to really have this gender balance? How important it is for them? Why would they really support it when everything is going fine and we are making great discoveries and we are going on with our research? Why should we really spend our time and energy on something like this, especially from the point of view of policymakers and journals and funding agencies?
You have to incentivize them. They're not going to get out of bed for anything less than looking good. So the only thing you're ever going to get them to do is if there's something in it for them, and I've trained leadership teams where I'm like, you don't have to believe this, but I can promise you it's going to make you look great, right? If you do it. And the reality is you have to be a bit ruthless about that. They will do it if it's going to look good on their, on their resume or in their political sphere. And so making sure that there's more incentive to do these things, and it's easy. That would be my thing. If you've already written the policy for them, and you've taken down any effort they have to do, that's the other way of really making sure you might get the policy on the table that you actually need. So making it easy and making it there no downside to doing it is one of, and then the other side is making it a punishment if you don't, but that's a bit riskier as a maneuver.
Yes. Great. Thank you very much. I think that's really what I follow and I believe in. And I think it confirms. Perfect. Any other questions for the panel and even for the other members? If you have any question, then please.
Can I ask a quick question, or just maybe your thoughts on what I'm about to say? I was just absolutely fascinated by your talk, and this kind of, it's almost this kind of cognitive behavioral thing that people need to be trained in, isn't it? But like you can't really force people into therapy that way, or this kind of but maybe I was wondering how you would train professional astronomers in this kind of a more accepting and self sort of reflecting kind of way of thinking and pausing and everything you mentioned. And I was wondering if you could frame it, maybe one could frame it in a way that makes it advantageous or for your scientific output. You combine it saying that if you have these kind of communication skills or these kind of psychological skills, then your science output and communication will be that much better as well. I don't know. Do you have any thoughts on that?
Well, I actually teach courses in this. I mean, so this is part of a broader scheme on a new ethical paradigm for science, because we don't train in ethics. We don't train in astronomy into being emotionally intelligent. And we've been told it's kind of lazy, right? We've been told, oh no, we're objective. We don't need to have any like social awareness, which is in fact the opposite. So actually demonstrating, and usually what I do is I show role models that a lot of men find leaders, like these people are kick-ass, and they're kick-ass because they have these kinds of superpowers mentally. So showing that they are mental superpowers to be able to be aware of knowing how you tick is the way to get people to the table. And I find it really effective. Not to mention, any scientist finds this stuff intriguing, right? So once you take away any judgment value on it, I think most people I've had in training at every stage are just really interested about understanding a bit more about why we do or why we react the way we do. And there's the idea that it makes you a better scientist. Definitely, I think, incentivizes this.
Yeah. Thank you. Yeah.
Right. Okay. So what was your personal motivation behind all this? Why are you yourself involved in, I mean, that's one question that people ask me, why spend time, hours and hours in doing something like this when you can write a research paper and be more, have more publication, etc. Why doing this? Why, what was your motivation to do it?
I mean, I think it's sort of, as I said, it's a hero complex on my part, partially. So I'm going to be really honest. I'm very honest with my sort of self things, which is I had a lot of horrible personal experiences in my astronomy career as a junior person. And I never got angry about any of them. It was when first I had women in my care starting to have the problems. That's the first time I unpacked how bad this was. And then I unpacked that. I'm like, wow, all of this happened to me. And I didn't make any of the same fight that I'm now making on behalf of these people. So then I had to have a real think about how much entrenched I had become in enabling this. So yeah, I think that was the thing, that's when I started to say, oh, no, okay, we need to do this systemically better. And that became sort of my vocation alongside the science, which is I do believe truly we can be both good scientists and good humans. And these things do not have to be in conflict. So it really became then both a mental puzzle to solve and a passion. So that's sort of why I'm interested. And also, I mean, I will now be ruthless as a leader. I get healthier organizations with better science out in included teams that are balanced. So it's also a reality, which is you get this right and you do get better science.
Okay, thank you. Thank you very much. Any other questions? If not, then let's thank again all the speakers. Thank you very much to the audience as well for their interesting questions and for being on with us until now. We are 2.5 hours since we started this session. So that's great. That shows already how successful it was. And we look upon you, all the speakers, the panel members, and again on Jessica with all her ideas that she has put in our minds now. So thank you once again and wish you all a very happy International Women's Day. Thank you. Bye.
Thank you.
Oh, thank you, Luca. You're there. If any questions for Luca? Right. Anyway, I'm sure people may write to you. Thank you again for being with us.
Thank you.
Bye.
Thank you. Bye.